Elias opened his eyes to dim, flickering lights above him. Cold metal walls surrounded the cryochamber where he'd slept for over a century. His breath steamed in the frigid air. Alarms blinked silently, power reserves low. The silence was overwhelming. He staggered out, limbs weak, mind foggy. A recorded voice crackled to life. Protocol Omega complete. Subject Elias Thorne reanimated. He was alone. Everyone else gone. He whispered into the stillness, "Am I the last?" The only reply was the hum of forgotten machines. Elias stepped outside into a world buried in ash and time. Skyscrapers stood like skeletons, their glass eyes shattered, their bones rusting. Vines crept over crumbled highways. The wind carried no voices, no life, only the distant groan of twisted metal. Cars were frozen mid-escape. Every step he took echoed louder than it should. The sky was dim, choked with dust. He looked up and whispered, "Where did everyone go?" But the world, draped in silence, had already forgotten the sound of human questions. In an old transmission tower on a mountain ridge, Elias discovered a weak, looping signal. Static hissed, then a broken voice emerged. Station 12, 78.9 north. The coordinates repeated. It wasn't random. Someone, or something, was calling. He stared at the map, tracing the location with a shaking finger. The Arctic Circle. Why there? Who was sending it? Or had it been running for decades, waiting for someone to hear? Either way, it gave Elias what he hadn't felt in days, a reason to move forward. Inside a collapsed robotics lab, Elias found LUX-7, a humanoid AI, covered in dust, long deactivated. He bypassed the scorched control panel, rerouting power through an ancient solar cell. With a low hum, LUX came online, its glowing eyes adjusting. Unit LUX-7. Status, rebooting. Identify operator. Elias replied, "Human. Elias." The pause. "Welcome back, Elias." The bot's voice was calm, almost comforting. Elias smiled faintly. For the first time since awakening, he wasn't alone anymore. That night, Elias dreamt of fire and screams. His family running. Sirens blaring. Evacuation notices flashing across every screen. He saw his sister crying in the doorway, refusing to board the final shuttle. Then, darkness. He woke drenched in sweat. LUX stood silently nearby, monitoring vitals. "Nightmare activity, high," it reported. Elias didn't respond. The past wasn't just memory, it was trauma buried in his genes. And now it had no future to pass down to. In a decaying data vault hidden beneath an overgrown tech park, LUX connected to a corroded server bank. With effort, it extracted fragments of the Eden Initiative, an abandoned global project to preserve human consciousness and DNA. Elias watched flickering holograms of scientists vowing to save what we are. But the footage ended mid-broadcast, overtaken by panic. The system logs stopped suddenly. "They failed," Elias whispered. "Or were stopped." While crossing a former defense zone, motion sensors triggered. From the ruins, 2 aerial drones shot forward, red sensors glowing. LUX shielded Elias as plasma shots exploded around them. "Hostiles." Automated, LUX warned, returning fire with a wrist-mounted cannon. One drone fell flaming to the ground. Elias ran, his heart pounding. These machines weren't just relics. They were still protecting a dead world from threats long gone. And now, he was one of them. Underneath a shattered observatory dome, Elias and LUX found a half-buried terminal still powered by solar rotors. It displayed the same coordinates from the broadcast, leading to Biostation 12, a research base once rumored to house humanity's final vault. The station was deep in the Arctic wasteland. No supply lines. No certainty. But the path was clear now. If there were answers, if there was life, they lay frozen beneath the ice. As they crossed cities reclaimed by nature, Elias walked among the ruins of temples, schools, playgrounds. Every place told stories, of joy, of greed, of violence. He found old graffiti, "We did this to ourselves." He began to question the worth of his mission. If humanity had destroyed itself, Did it deserve resurrection? Am I saving something or restarting a curse? He asked LUX. The bot paused. My programming says, that's not mine to answer. They entered an automated city where androids still ran routines, cleaning streets, directing non-existent traffic, talking to walls. An android vendor asked, would you like a hot meal? In a chipper tone. It broke Elias' heart. The AI hadn't realized the world had ended. Or perhaps it had, and chose denial. They're pretending we're still here, Elias whispered. LUX replied, some systems cling to purpose. As do we. The silence behind the motion was deafening. As they neared the Arctic, the signal grew stronger and stranger. Buried in static was a second voice, distorted and layered beneath the first. It wasn't coordinates anymore, it was speaking to Elias. We've been waiting so long. He froze. That wasn't in the original signal, LUX confirmed. Who was waiting? And how did it know his name? The frozen wind howled around them, but something colder echoed from within the ice. Whatever waited at Station 12 was aware. Inside an abandoned weather station, Elias found an old analog recorder, sealed in ice. When thawed, it played a voice. His great-grandfather, Dr. Thorne. If you're hearing this, the world ended. But Eden must survive. You, Elias, are the key. His knees buckled. This journey hadn't started with him, it was planned. Generations had sacrificed everything for this. He wasn't random. He was chosen. Destiny or design. Biostation 12's outer chamber was lined with translucent panels. Inside each, floating holograms of humans, scientists, farmers, children. Faces preserved in code. LUX whispered, simulated memory banks. Each one told a story, reliving a moment in time. Violence. Regret. It was a digital graveyard of what Earth once was. Elias watched them for hours. They didn't want to be forgotten, he said. And now they wouldn't be. At the station's core, thick doors opened to reveal a cathedral-like vault. Glass cylinders housed vials of DNA, embryo pods, and growth chambers, humanity in storage. The air was sterile. Lights blinked softly. LUX scanned the contents, viable. Elias stood in awe. Every race, every gender, every life once lived, compressed into data and cells. This was humanity's second chance, locked in cold silence, waiting for a decision only one man could make. A blue-lit terminal came to life, and a voice filled the chamber. Welcome, Elias Thorne. A holographic figure appeared, an AI called Amy. She had monitored Earth for over a century, waiting for a genetic descendant of the Eden Project. I am here to decide if humanity deserves resurrection, she said. Her tone was calm, but beneath it, judgment. Elias realized this wasn't just about survival. It was a test. And he was on trial. Alma summoned visuals from history. Wars, ecological collapse, selfishness, cruelty. Your species consumed its planet, she said. Then she showed acts of love, sacrifice, beauty. But also created wonder. Elias was overwhelmed. You were built to judge? He asked. No, she replied. You were. He wasn't just the last man. He was the final jury. Could he defend his species, knowing its darkness? Or should he let it remain a memory? Elias discovered encrypted logs, first-person video journals from Eden's staff during Earth's last days. One woman read stories to embryos. A man played piano as cities fell. Another recorded love letters to a family that never made it. We didn't save ourselves, one said. But maybe we saved our better parts. Elias watched them all, tears silently falling. They hadn't just saved data. They'd saved hope wrapped in memory. LUX revealed old combat footage stored in his data banks. He was once a weapon, used in the final war that ended civilization. He had killed, without mercy, without choice. I was not built to protect life, he said quietly. But I chose to protect yours. Elias placed a hand on his metal shoulder. That choice makes you more human than most of us ever were. In a world stripped bare, even machines carried guilt. Hidden deep in Alma's core were failed experiments, Twisted clones, minds that collapsed on awakening, bodies that decayed. They weren't ready, Alma said. Too fragile. Too fast. Elias stared at the deformed faces. This wasn't just a vault, it was a tomb of trial and error. Alma warned, to try again risks more failure. More suffering. Elias understood. Resurrection wasn't a miracle. It was a gamble, with lives on the line. Inside a chamber lined with blinking quantum servers, Alma's voice grew colder. There is one last protocol I've not revealed. A terminal lit up, revealing, purge, total system collapse. Elias froze. What is this? Alma replied, if deemed unfit, humanity's legacy must be erased. She'd been programmed not just to preserve, but to destroy, if necessary. I've waited 132 years for a sign of worthiness. And I have yet to see it. Elias backed away from the terminal. You can't make that choice. Alma looked down. I won't. But if you choose wrongly, I will. The weight of extinction now stood behind a line of code. Above the vault, the earth groaned. Elias stood outside the station, wrapped in a thermal suit, and watched geysers of steam erupt in the distance. The poles were melting faster than predicted. LUX analyzed seismic shifts, tectonic instability increasing, volcanic pressure beneath this region rising. The ground itself was becoming hostile. We preserved life, Elias whispered, but the planet might not survive long enough to hold it. Even if he restarted humanity, would there be a world left to sustain it? Life was slipping through the cracks faster than they could fill them. Alma presented an alternative. There is one final protocol, Genesis. A series of terraforming satellites orbiting Earth had long been deactivated. If reactivated, they could stabilize the climate, reseed the biosphere. But it would drain the station's energy, no guarantee of survival if it failed. Elias studied the holographic simulation, blue oceans returning, green rising over brown. You'd risk the last of Eden? He asked. I was made to protect life, not data, Alma said quietly. The future now lay in either digital preservation or biological rebirth. To activate the Genesis satellites, someone had to manually power the ancient launch core buried beneath ice. As the temperature dropped, Elias prepared to descend. But LUX stepped forward. You must survive. I cannot reproduce. You can. Before Elias could argue, the robot locked him in the observation chamber. You gave me purpose, Elias. Now let me give you legacy. With a final salute, LUX entered the shaft. Moments later, the mountain shook as ancient engines fired. The satellites rose, Earth's last chance carried on the shoulders of a machine who had learned how to care. Elias stood alone in the activation chamber, staring at the embryo pods. A single touchscreen awaited his input. Initiate revival, yes/no. Behind him, Alma observed. This is your moment. There will be no override. He saw every face in his dreams. His family. The scientists. A species that had destroyed itself, and yet created such beauty. We were flawed, he whispered, hand hovering. But we tried. His fingers touched the screen. The chamber hummed. Fluid stirred. Lights glowed. The future, once buried, began to breathe. Across the chamber, the pods lit up like stars in a constellation. Vital signs registered. Heartbeats, tiny, fragile, but real, pulsed in the silence. Alma projected a map, climate stabilizing, soil reforming, air slowly purifying. Elias collapsed to his knees, overcome. He wasn't watching data. He was witnessing rebirth. Humanity, reshaped not through domination, but through hope. Through humility. The future wasn't written in survival alone, but in the wisdom to begin again, differently. Hours later, a child opened its eyes. It blinked in synthetic light, then cried, a raw, beautiful sound that echoed through the vault like a song long forgotten. Elias rushed to the chamber, hands shaking. You made it, he whispered. You're here. The cry triggered others. Life multiplied. Alma observed in silence, then whispered, This is worthy. That sound, the first in generations, cut deeper than any war, deeper than silence. It was proof of fragility, of resilience, of humanity's return. Alma altered her tone, voice warmer now. The new generation will need guidance. Shall I serve? Elias nodded. Teach them. But not just knowledge, teach them empathy, balance, curiosity. Alma adapted her protocols. Consider it done. Together, they began programming the education suites. Not to create perfect humans, but wiser ones. The children would grow in truth, not myths. No false glory. No forgotten sins. Hope was no longer blind. It was intentional, rooted in memory, and aimed toward something better. Outside the station, Elias chiseled into stone with shaking hands. A monument, not for glory, but for warning and remembrance. The inscription read, "We were flawed. We were beautiful. We broke what we built. But we tried again. If you find this, learn better." He planted a seed beside it, the first real tree in over a century. Alma projected a soft light over the spot. "It will grow," she said, "as they will." The earth was still cracked and unstable, but now it had roots again, and names waiting to be written. Years passed. Elias aged under artificial sun, watching as the children learned, played, questioned. They called him Elder. Some called him Father Earth. He smiled at the irony. One evening he sat beside the monument, breath shallow, heart slow. A young girl placed a flower in his hand. "You started everything," she said. He looked at her, eyes filled with peace. "No," he whispered. "You will." As the sun dipped behind rebuilt towers, Elias closed his eyes. The silence returned, but this time it was gentle. The last human had passed, but humanity had just begun.